would do a cursory look, and I challenge people to go in and Google and kind of pull up different orchestras throughout the United States and take a glimpse at the pictures there and see if you see an African-American string players within those orchestras. And if you did that, you would probably end up saying, well, maybe I saw one or two, but that would be it. And you would think about looking at slavery, if you think about Roots and Fiddler in the Roots, that you knew people could then indeed play. But there was something ingrained in the society that indicated that people, even if they had an interest in wanting to play a string instrument, by law they could not. And even if they got well enough to play, there was something systemic in the institution of fairness that was inequality that said you could not be a part of the orchestra. And there are plenty of people, if you look at the literature, but one person by the name of Eddie South, whether people are familiar with this person, Heifetz was considered one of the greatest violinists in the country. And he went to New Orleans because he heard about this person that he had to perform that night by the name of Eddie South. And he went and played the piece that he was going to perform as a solo, Heifetz did, with Eddie South, and note for note, Eddie South was able to play. He said, my goodness, you should be able to play anywhere in the world. But because of the pigmentation of his skin, the systemic nature of racism and inequality, he was not able to be a part of an orchestra. Today, whatever the date is, 2017, and if you do a cursory look at those pictures, you will find the same issue right now that you would have found then. And why? Primarily because it was not a part of the culture to be fair, to allow people to explore, to allow people to have interest. It took that from people, just whatever is human natural, human nature to be able to do that. Because we know of the great Duke Ellington and Count Basie and John Coltrane and everyone else who could flourish could. So there's nothing different in that instrument than another one. But there was something in the very fabric that prevented that. So when we think about all we've been talking about today, systemic racism and the impact of inequality, there's still a need for people to recognize that that occurred, so that you would have something quite similar to an affirmative action plan that would say, let's seek out, let's look for people who have the qualifications, that have the fortitude, and you might have to do something a little different to then bring those people in to these symphonies.
Finally, Dr. Sanford, would you say that the efforts to create African study departments and various kinds of inclusive kinds of organizations on college campuses is an attempt to try to reach at this memory and really change this memory at an early age? In other words, even elementary school children who have an opportunity to live and work with one another, different races, different religions, and et cetera, that is an effort and a method whereby this system, systemic racism and inequality might be dealt with, even though we might never erase it because of memory, but we might be able to deal with it much more effectively than we're doing.
That's absolutely. And I've been in the charge of doing that now for really all of my educational career in diversity in education and having a curriculum that is more diverse, even in kindergarten, leading through high school, and then at institutions of higher education. And as a person that was a former director of Africana Studies in all places at the University of Montana, I would have a class that had 280 to 310, and the vast majority were European American. It is very important to be able to talk about the true history in its context. And what that does, it eradicates to a certain degree the nature of prejudice. It reduces the fear that people might have. It increases the knowledge, and as you become more familiar, Dr. Gordon Allport would say, with a particular group, then you become more comfortable with allowing you to be open and fair to that group. So back to your point, I think, yes, it's very important to have this within all of the educational system to try to help people to have a better understanding of different ethnic groups and diversity, in not only for different ethnic groups, but also for women, also for gay brothers, lesbian, groups of people in our society, so that we can have laws that would change, opportunities that will increase, and that would help people a lot.
The only way we can end racism or sexism in America is through diversity. That is bringing different races, sexes, and everything else together and having them to understand and to know more about one another. We can then start dealing with this systemic aspect of it. Is that what we're saying?
That's exactly what we're saying. From the curriculum to the integration or the segregation of programs to the inclusion. But I would like to say, social psychologically and sociologically, that it has to be recognized. If that issue or concern is not recognized as a reoccurring pattern, then you will not have an individual in there to then want to do it. So I think this education will certainly assist in that effort. But if you don't see it, then you can always just continue in the same way that it has always been done. And people will kind of applaud that. And we have to see that as a positive, to be able to be inclusive versus exclusive of groups of people being a part of. And I'm hoping that, but I've become a little discouraged that we have taken steps back more so than usual with this new election that is coming up, and that it just seemed like it's a step backwards versus a forward. Yes, and it's sad.
You know, Dr. Sanford, I think over the last couple of minutes that we have here, if we think in terms of solutions, we can say that separate institution, whether that be an educational institution or whatever kind of institution, whatever kind of race, these are things that are against this idea of bringing about a better understanding of various individuals within our society.
Absolutely, because I think one of the strong thrusts that has been worked on for over these years, even with the Supreme Court justice, has been inclusion with diversity. It has come before the Supreme Court a number of times, and each time with Sandra Day O'Connor's, as well as recently with support of diversity, not only at institutions of higher education, but also in the workforce. They see the strength, not it being negative, that you are being inclusive, that you are having different groups represented. And that should be looked at as being positive versus being negative. And I hope that we can continue to work in that vein and understand that, because there's still a lot of work to do. At the higher echelons of employment, as far as education, those who are working there, you'll still find fewer people of color in general and women than you will the dominant group.